Good day everyone, welcome to another session of JavaScript. This is JavaScript 106 and we're going to be talking about functions and variable scope. Starting up from functions. What are functions? Functions is a general thing in programming language, and the definition is not different from what JavaScript will look at as a function to be. So function is a generality to all programming language. It's available in all programs, irrespective of the fact that we are using JavaScript. So the functions, what they do is the same across board. The only thing that makes it different in JavaScript is the way we define them. So what is function? Functions are a block of reusable codes that can be defined and executed to perform a specific task. Function helps in the organization of our codes into smaller and manageable chunks and can be called upon whenever we need them. So look at all the codes we've been writing all this while. Even though we've not been writing sophisticated codes over time, there will be some times whereby we will write code that we can reuse. Functions allow you to make use of those codes and make it manageable. Now that we've understand what function is, that is a block of code that can be reused as many times as you want as the need occur, how do you then define a function? Because you need to define a function before you can use it. Look at it like a variable. Before you could use a variable, you need to define it, then you use it. The same thing in a function. So to define a function, you use the keyword function first. So the keyword function is to tell the system that you are about starting and you want to go ahead and create a function. And remember, when we're using declaring a variable, we use let and const. In this case, you say function, followed by the function name. The function name is what you want the function to be called. You know, it can be called anything. Just like in the variable name, you call your variable anything that you want to make it to be. It only makes sense to you. It doesn't make sense to the computer. All these things we are writing is we that are making sense of out of what we are doing, right? So anything you are doing or anything you are trying to program, the function name has to make sense to you so that you'll be able to understand what you are even, doing. So this is a function name where you define what your function is about to do. Like in the name, we can tell it to maybe off or on. You want to off a light or on a light, or you want to find the square root of something. Whatever the name will be, you put it there as the function name, followed by a bracket. Now that bracket denotes where an input will come into the function. Another definition of a function is that it receives input and processes that input to deliver an output. So you receive an input from a function, and inside the function you process those inputs that you've received so that you can deliver an output. Sometimes your function might not have input, so it's optional. There might be some function that doesn't need any input, depending on the use case. So depending on the scenario that you are programming for, you might not need a parameter or you might not need an input into that function. And that's fine if there's no input into that function. You needing an input or not will be determined by what you are trying to solve. So let's go ahead and say, give or take, we have parameter. And again, parameters are supposed to be a kind of input. They are supposed to be a label, a placeholder to be in a place for what you want to use inside the function. Again, what will determine if you need a parameter is what the function is supposed to be doing. Then lastly, we now have code block. This code block section, meaning that all the things you want your function to do will be inside this block of code. This is how to define a function. This function is not doing anything, no, it's just a syntax. The next thing you need to know is, even though you have that function, it's useless until it is called or until it is invoked or until it is used. When you have a function by itself, it's useless until somebody calls it, until somebody consumes it, or until somebody invokes it. If you have a function that does a multiplication table and nobody calls it, it's useless. So it becomes useful when you call the function. So how do you call a function that has been written? To call it, you just use the name of the function, followed by the name of the function, which is function name. So I'm using the same way we've typed it here. I'm maintaining the same name, and then you follow by the arguments. In this case, they now become the value you want to pass into the parameter. When you are defining it is a parameter. When you are putting value into it, it now becomes an argument. These are just terminologies. So now we've invoked this function, you've called this function. This is how to call it. We're going to do a real life example right away, so not to worry. This is syntax. The first thing we did is what I call definition. So definition of function. So the second thing that you need to worry about is how to use your function. So this is how to use your function. So you call it this way. So let's go ahead and do an example. While we are preparing to do an example, I've gone ahead to provide something different for us for testing. All this while we were using preview to test, but I've gotten a better extension, and that extension is called code run. So if you go to your extension button, I'll provide a link to it in the description below. So you type code run. So if you type code run, that's the first extension that you have there. When you install it, it allows you to run a piece of code that you have in your JS file. So you also notice that I have my JS file starting. I don't need to put any script again. I just want to write it directly. So once you install that extension, and then you can run your code there. So let's go ahead and write a proper code to print something on the console. So how do you do that? So it's a function, is a keyword we're going to use to define a function, and then with the function name, we just say greet. We want to greet, just want to greet, and we are starting with the fact that we don't want to accept any parameter yet. As I've mentioned, we want to give you all the scenarios. So this is a function with no parameter, and then we provide our block code here. The purpose of this block code is that it executes what is inside the function. I just say hello. That's all we are doing. As I've said, this function is useless until it is consumed. So if you run this code now, nothing happens. It doesn't do anything per se. The function is there in memory, but it's not being used. So how do you use it? From my explanation, you just call the function and you put these brackets inside. Because it doesn't have any argument to be passed, you leave it this way. This is the new extension I've installed, and the extension name is code run. Once I click on the run button here, there's a button on the extreme right that I can click to run this code, so it gives us a clean result than what we've been having. So you can see our result. It says hello there. That's our result we have at the bottom. Just to show you that you can call this greet as many times as you want. A recap of our for loop. So let's go ahead and declare our for loop. Remember the for. Remember the first thing is initialization. Let I equal to 0, and the next thing is condition when I is less than 5. I want the system to greet 5 times. That's what I want to do. And then what's my next thing? I want my counter. And inside the for loop, I will have what again? I will have my code block, so that if I run this code, it should write hello there 5 times. So you can see that this function will be called as many times as you want. I just write the function once, and it does what it needs to do as many times as I want. So let's go ahead and get a little bit advanced by saying you want to greet somebody by name, right? You want to greet somebody by name. So you want to be able to say greet Michael, greet Sam, greet John, greet James. So we want to be able to pass a parameter that can say, okay, this is the person we want to greet. Really, we don't want to just greet everybody in general. So how do we do that? So I say write a function to print hello to the screen, function with 1 parameter. Of course, you can have as many parameters as you want, but again, we are doing gradually. So what's the parameter I'm passing here now? I will say the name of the person I want to greet. And you can see the way I denote the parameter. Just go ahead and say the value, the name of the variable as a placeholder. So this is like a placeholder to hold whatever name that you will pass when you are calling it. So this value, you can use it within here with the assumption that whenever it's now being provided, your function will know what to do with it. So what we want to do with it is to say hello in such a way that the system will print the name of whosoever that was passed here. Right? So again, if you run this, nothing happens because you've not called the function. You've written the function quite all right. Then now you need to be able to call it. How do you call it? You just do greet, and then you say, maybe you want to say Peter. So you wrote a code now to greet Peter, a function to greet Peter, and then you can now be able to call it anytime. So anytime you want to greet anybody that is new, you just say greet Peter or greet the name of the person, and it will just keep doing the greet for you as many times as you want. So that's how interesting it is. And let's now play with a little thing we've learned, just to recap what we've learned. So let's say we have constant array of people. I want the system to greet all of them. Then I'll use our for let's p in people. Then I will say greet. So let's say we have our p. So if you run that, it should give you this. This is for index. So if we use of, it should be of your value. So this will give you this. So you can say hello James, hello John, hello Kunle, So let's go ahead and do another thing for passing functions with 2 parameters. But very simple function to add 2 numbers. Again, how do you define your function? You go this way, function, so add numbers. So I just call it add numbers. That's the name of the function. Then, the intention of your function will determine what parameters you are going to pass. Remember, that's what I told you. And now, because you are going to be adding 2 numbers, obviously you will need 2 arguments. And you can name them anything you want. So for the purpose of simplicity, we're just going to name them A and B. So meaning the first value is A and the second value is B. Then we introduce our code block. Look at that syntax very well. So you can see this one is carrying our first parameter and the second one is carrying our third parameter. We've been printing to console since. I want to introduce the third leg of what a function does, and is to return what it has processed. If you add 2 numbers, not every time you want to be printing to console. What if you want to do something to it? You want to hold the information. So to hold that information or to make that information return, you use the keyword return to return the value of what it has processed or what it has figured out from what it's doing. So in this case, we're adding 2 numbers. So when we add the 2 numbers, we want to return what it added. So you can either do A plus B here directly. We're not doing anything special. And it returns the summation of this, right, inside here. And that's fine. So, and that becomes what this function is responsible to doing. Again, how do you invoke it? How do we use it? So let's go ahead and use it. And I will just say constant, and I will say result is equal to, I want to add 2 numbers now. Add numbers, and I'm just putting it directly. So I'll say 12 and 44. Those are the 2 numbers I want to add. Now let me explain this section very well to you so that you will know what's going on here. It's very important that you get this part. The function here is accepting 2 inputs or 2 parameters and is processing it and returning the value. What that means is that whatever goes on in line 9 after the computation has occurred, it will return it to where? To results. Then you can print out your results, because all this console log we are doing is just to show you the results. You will not be doing console log every time. So you need to understand what goes on in the operations, and once you are done with your function, you can then go and do console log outside. And that's what I want to do outside now. So once I dump it here, I just run it and it gives me 56. So at any point in time, you can always do something like this and then it will do results for you. So I will give you guys one last example before we move on to the next thing. So area of a circle. First of all, you need to know the formula. Then the function name is area of a circle. Right? Area of a circle requires the radius. The formula is there's a constant we need to declare. And the constant for pi is 22/7. That's 3.14. Then the next thing is what you want to do is to get your results. My result is then equal to pi multiplied by our radius. Look at our radius here. Remember that this section here in the function declaration is you are assuming that the radius has been captured. You know what the radius is. It's at the point of usage that the system will compute it. But at this stage, you assume that it will be passed. So once it's passed, you are using it. So we'll use our radius. And remember to do our squares thing there, because it's raised to power 2. We have to do times 2 to give us that, stuff here. We treated this long ago. Let's just console log our results straight. Console log and say area of a circle. We can then say we want to find area of a circle of 4. So you can see that we're just using it direct. So if you use area of circle of 4, we get 50.28. That's our result for this. So you can see what is going on inside your formula. Now this becomes standard. You can use this anywhere and it will give you your answer. And what this does is that it reduces your code in terms of the management of your code. Imagine if someone else wants to find area of circle. They don't need to write this all over again. Because when you are dealing with applications, you have several modules that you are working with, and it's possible that somebody needs your function or somebody needs a function that someone else is using. So it's good for you to have your code in functions so that people can reuse a function that is already working. And by the way, there are functions in JavaScript that are inbuilt that you can leverage on. We'll get there. All what we are doing now is user-defined function, the function that you define yourself because it's not available in JavaScript, and that's why you are doing it yourself. Now that we've been able to know function to a reasonable understanding, I want to start introducing other things, and that is variable scoping. You guys understand variable, right? You know what variable means. I need to let you know where those variables are and how accessible they are. Variable scoping means the lifespan of a variable, how the variable can be used across your application. This file is called app.js, and any variable you declare might or might not be usable inside the entire document. So let me show you what I mean by that. So this is the beginning of the document, and immediately we stumble on function. Look at what happened inside the function. A variable was declared and it was declared pi. Another variable in line 5 was declared and it was declared result. Do you know that these two variables are not available outside the function? You can't use them outside the function because it's local to what? To this function alone. This function is the one that can use this. Now you can give it a try. So let's console log pi and see what happened. If you try to do that, obviously it's going to give us an error because pi is not defined inside the document. It's only confined to this function. So let's run it and see what we get. Obviously we get this error. Pi is not defined. And the purpose of this section is to understand how variable works. Remember what this section is, this code block. Code blocks allows you to be able to define variable within a scope. Whenever you see a code block, it means a new word is starting. You are starting a new dimension. Remember where you have code blocks. In if you have code blocks. So let me show you all the code blocks available, if I can bring everything up to speed. So you have your if section, you have your code block. What that means is that if you define any variable within this if section, if you try and define anything within the if section, it's local to the if section. You can't use it outside of the if section. Very important. So we have other block section that we've been using all this while. Even our for loop, whatever thing you define inside your for loop, it only lives inside your for loop. I use the word defined inside, and you know how to define. We use constant and let to define. If you define it outside, what then happens? It means it's available worldwide. So let me give you a scenario. Let's define the pi outside. So what this means when you define it outside is that the pi now has the global variable, meaning it's not a global variable. Anybody can use it. And there will be a reason why you want to make a variable global, because you want to use it across your entire application. So you want to make it global. If we run this now, it will not give us error. So let's run it, and you can see everything worked. Your pi is being printed to be 3.1428, and then your pi was also used in the computation of area of a circle, which worked fantastic. This gives you the idea of scoping of variable. As I've said, any code block that you have, if you go and define a variable inside your code block, it is local to that code block. Immediately the code block ends, that variable terminates. Like this result now, we cannot use it anywhere else. It's only visible or usable within the function. Those rules are very important for you to understand. So anything you declare outside is used everywhere. So when you have your code block, be very sensitive to when you define it. And again, do you see the reason why we need to use the word constant and let? So let me say, for example, mistakenly, let me say somebody now say pi is equal to, let's say, 33. But because you were so smart and you know that pi is not supposed to change, you use the word constant. And if somebody try to change it, what happens? It's going to give an error and say what? Assignment to constant variable, error. But if you go and use the word let allow you to rechange the value. If you run this now, it will work. However, you then have a bug. Those are programming terminology we'll learn to explain later. So your program works, but it's not giving the right results because it's expecting 22/7, but in your coding computation is writing 33, which is wrong. So that's why you must learn to use the right declaration, and the reason for declaring those things, you should know why. That's why when you use the word constant, you know that you don't want it to change. And the reason for using let, it means it can never be redefined again. When you use let, you can't use let twice, just use let once, and that is it. Let's move on to the next thing. The next thing I want to cover now is function in a function, which sound weird. Having a function in a function. So what's the big deal about that? What's that about? This man, you want to confuse us more and more. Just like you have nested loop, you can also do nested function. Meaning in a function, you can also have a function inside it. Area of a circle that needs a function. You need to customize a function just for area of a circle alone. The reason why you want to do that is because you don't want other people to worry about that function. You want that function to be localized for area of a function alone. So let's go ahead and do a new function inside a function, because we already have our function called area of circle, and let's provide another function inside. To do another function, you can just use the same principle. You just say function. The function name is, let me just say x, the lack of a better word, and then use our bracket to denote parameter, and then our code block. So you can see that we've just brought out a new function out of this function. And if you run it, it won't give you any issue. It won't, if you don't do anything, it won't give you any issue. This x is not available outside of this function. You can't use the x anywhere. So you can't call s like this, right? It won't work. It's not defined. That x is not defined, right? You can see that x is not defined because it's inside another function. It's not reachable. You can't reach it. So it's only local. This function is local to this function here, and we can call this s. I'm going to call this x function for you just to show you that it is running. So a way to call it is just to, first of all, let's define what the function will do, and let's just console log our result so that we're going to see that something is working inside. Let's call the function x. I told you how to call the function. You just say the name of the function and bracket open and close. If we run this now, and then you have your result there, I just called x function. So you can see that this function is being executed based on the fact that you've called the general function. So this is how you can have a function in a function. There are other ways that you can use or you can define functions, but because you guys are just starting, I'm not going to confuse you guys with implementing closures and what have you. There are other methods to write a function. So if I say let k equals to high, the variable that you declare here is not accessible outside. Very good. But the variable that you declare outside the function is available. So let's bring the variable back here. So bringing the variable back, this pi is available inside what? Inside your x. So as you can see, because it's one step outside, so the function can access a variable outside. But of course, anything outside this function cannot access what is in. You can see the code thing I did here. It shows you that everything here is locked. If I did the same thing here, it shows that everything here is locked. So anything outside cannot access what is inside, but what is inside here can access what is outside. If I run this now, you see that our pi is going to show you what our pi is, because this is a global function, a global variable to this. As far as this is concerned, this is global to it. And if I declare it outside as well, it's still available to it, because here itself it even have more coverage, so everybody can feed off of this variable. So you need to understand the scope of the variable and how it is being used. So let's now move on to the next thing and tell you about the functions that are available in JavaScript. I'm not going to cover all the functions. It's just to show you that JavaScript has its own functions that you can use. Now that we have defined what a function is, it is now safe for us to talk about member functions. Member functions are functions that are associated with objects. If we're talking about string, numbers, and array objects, we talked about functions, but we didn't go in depth with them because we've not defined what a function is. Let's say A is equal to hello. Obviously, you know this is a string, right? And then let's say console log a. So I want to start calling functions that are available. I already mentioned some of the functions that are available. And you guys, for other assignments that you guys will go and do, is to look at all the functions that are available as a string, member functions that are available for string. And you can do that, the same thing for number as well. And you can experiment on it. We're going to have a separate class on that. So this class is just an eye-opener telling you that there are member functions for all your data types that we have. So we're going to be taking them gradually. To put your dot notation there, you will see all the functions. By the way, functions are also called methods. And all these functions that you have here, they do specific things. And you are supposed to know all what they do. Yes, you're supposed to know all what they do. The reason why you're supposed to know what they do is to help you when you want to solve a problem. Like if we've gone deeper in this now, I can tell you to reverse this hello. Write a code to reverse hello. That's a code to reverse this. Do you get? Now you can be thinking, how can I write a code? Yes, you can write a code to reverse this. If you know all the functions available, you know that, oh, I can get the first letter, I move it to the last letter. Oh, I can even count the character, or I can get the fourth item. I can tell you write a code to make the first letter capitalize, right? And you knowing all the functions that is available for a string will help you put all the functions together and say, oh, okay, this one will make me get the first character. Oh, this one will make me make it uppercase. So let's even do making a first character. Let's do that. Let's go ahead and do that and do a test. And remember, we're going to have a robust class on this. This is just a snippet of what we're expecting to see. So what I want to do is I want to be able to get the first character out. As I've said, let me see what is available so that you see what's available. So you can see this one is to give me a character, find a character at. So I can say get the first character. So this one makes it easy for me. I can say get the first character. So this character at allow me to insert a position on the whole character. So I can say which position do I want to get. I know that character counting in string starts from 0. Anything counting in JavaScript starts from 0. So if you are counting anything, so if I say you should give me character at 0, it will give me the first thing, which is H. So if you run this now, you should be expecting to see an H. So you can see your result there is giving you an H. So you can say, oh, okay, this H, I want it to be capitalized. So what other thing can you use to capitalize a value? So let's see if we have a function that can help us to capitalize a character. You can go ahead and do a dot again. And then you look at all the options that you have there. There is uppercase there. It's called to uppercase. And then when you run it, you can see that the H has been converted to uppercase. So let's go ahead and run everything in a loop. So because the string allows you to pick everything in a loop like this, you can pick everything one by one. If you have X, so I can say let item, each of the item, let me say character, each of the character in. So let me call this hello. Let me change this variable name to hello so that I will be able to get this in this. So let's console log and see what it says in the console log. When you run this, and you should see something like this. Look at what it prints out. It prints out the index. So when you say off, the off prints out the value. The loop picks each one of these and represented it this way. Remember what we want to do. We want to change this to a proper uppercase. The H, we want to make it proper capital letter, while the rest can remain lowercase. That's the code we want to run. One of the things you need to be able to do is to write procedures in your head or write it down. Procedures on how to write an algorithm. Like, okay, how do I tackle this problem? I want to make H capital letter and the rest smaller letter. So first of all was for me to look through it. Now that I've looked through it, I need to save all my value in some way and make sure that whenever it is first letter, make it capital letter and the rest don't bother. Okay, first of all, how do I know that it's the first letter? I need to do an if condition. So let's go ahead and do an if condition. If. Now this is where you can use your counter to count the position. So since we don't have a counter to count, I will create a counter myself. So I'm going to create a counter. Let I equal to 0. So I want to create a counter so that it will keep counting for me immediately I'm inside if. When I'm inside the loop, it will keep counting. So I++. In fact, I want to make it count after. So that when everything is finished, count it after instead. So once I is equal to 0, that's what we need. If I is equal to 0, meaning that's the first character. what do? We'll make it an uppercase. So, but when we are making the uppercase, we need to store the value somewhere. So we need something that we can use to store the new hello. So I will say this is my new hello. So this is storing our new hello. So I'll come here and say once I is equal to 0, meaning that's the first character, then get the first character, which is going to be here. Now what do you do to it? You turn it to uppercase. Once you turn it to uppercase, it saves inside here. Then what do you do with the rest? What do you do with the rest? You convert the rest, you put the rest inside itself. So you put the value of what is here inside itself. And that's why you have this plus this. So let's go ahead and see what we have at the end. So this script is what will give us what we wanted. And let's see if it will give us that. And if it doesn't, we will debug it. So debugging means we'll find the problem and solve it. So let's do console and log and see what our new hello will give us. So if we run our new hello, we have it works the first time. Very straightforward. You can see it doesn't only work for hello, you can try it for anything. So you can say baby. So if you do baby, the idea is that to convert it to capital letter B. Now you've written a function. No, it's not a function yet because you just wrote everything blah 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 blah. We want to turn this to a proper function now. To turn this to a proper function that you can reuse at any time is just encapsulate these things inside a function. Like just put everything now inside a function so that you can call it anytime you want. Mind you guys, we are going to have a proper class for this. This is just like a snippet of what we are going to do, because now once we have started talking about function, we start getting serious. That's what it means. We start getting serious. So I'm going to convert this to a function, and function name will be cap first letter. Then what parameter are we adding? Then the word that we want to cap, right? And then every of this code will then be inside, so that we can then change some of the terminology that we have. Like this word will then replace the hello that we have. Every place where we have the hello, we change it. Then this new word, new hello, will become new word that we want to use. So that we then have a new function, that brand new function that can help us at any time. If we want to do anything anytime, we can then say console log and start making use of our new function. I can say, let me pass something funny to it and say hello new function. So I can write another thing and say I'm a guy. I can write another thing and say good to go. So let's run these three functions and we expect, wow, okay, good one. So we return undefined, and this is because we did not return our results. So you see what I was talking about. You can write your function all fine, but we didn't return what it was supposed to do. After we've done all this heavy lifting, we didn't return our result. And what is the result to return? Who can guess? Our new word is what we are returning. So we say return new word. So once we've done that, let's run again, and then you can see hello new function, capitalize first letter, and it's doing it all well. So write a function that can calculate any multiplication table. That you can make it pass two parameters. The first value, which can be 4, and then how many times table that you want to build. By default is 12 with stuff, so 4 times 1 for 4 times 2. So you can say the first value is what you are multiplying. Then the second value is how long you want it to build your times table. So this is a function. So once you have that function, you can build any times table that you want in any length. That's you guys' assignment. Thank you for staying to the end. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and turn on bell notification in order to be notified when we release new videos. See you in the next one.